how often we have tried to correct our children. I have 5, and they go through that age when they want to know why. It's always why. Now, of course, it's impossible to always answer that question. Sometimes it's not necessary. I think that every time a child asks why, you don't have to give an answer. You just say, well, you don't have to know why, just do it. But I really don't believe that is the thing to do every time. I think there are times when we ought to take some time and explain why. Now you have to, of course, the wisdom comes in knowing when to answer the whys. Now, I want to call your attention to a verse tonight, a couple of verses that I'm going to be dealing with. Verse 12, it says, "And we beseech you, brethren, to know them that labor among you and are over you in the Lord, and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake, and be at peace among yourselves." Now my subject tonight is for the work's sake. For the work's sake. I want to talk to you about that tonight. My why is stated in my subject, or in the theme of the topic. For the work's sake. Now in the ministry, the work is greater than the man. The work is greater than the man. I don't know of anything greater than the gospel. The Apostle Paul tells us that you and I are to live lives that are above reproach for the gospel's sake. And believe it or not, the world simply reads you and me. They don't read the Bible. And a man is impressed either negatively or positively about the gospel according to how you and I live. It's not enough on the job to tell a man what to believe. You've got to show him what to believe and how to live it. I spend a lot of time with preachers. I love preachers. But to tell you quite frankly, I get upset with a lot of preachers. I'm sure they get upset with me. I cannot stand rude preachers. I cannot stand rude Christians. But I have less respect for rude preachers. I am not impressed by preachers who go around and ask for their 10% discount. I'm embarrassed. I'm not impressed by Christians who are rude to waitresses and servants. Fellows, I get around preachers sometime and they act like they're God's gift to the world. And they forget that they are servants. And so, as I deal with my subject tonight, I lay all this groundwork to let you know that I certainly do not think that preachers are faultless and above reproach, and that they are above being corrected. The Bible does not teach that a preacher should not be corrected. The Bible simply shows how it ought to be done. Why? For the work's sake. God never says that a preacher can't be wrong. As a matter of fact, many of them are. Many of us are. I've been wrong many times. My wife says. I don't know when, but I'm sure that I have made a mistake once or twice. Brother Pennington was preaching over here, Nob Hill or somewhere. What's the name of that place? Was that in Oregon? He was preaching, and a lady caught him at the door on the way out and said, "You strike me as having too much pride. What do you say?" "I do not." "What do you say?" "He strikes me as being a great guy." But in spite of that, none of us are above wrong and making mistakes. I pastored a little church in Manning, Iowa, and the more I look back on those days, the more I love those people, because now I realize what they had to put up with. I mean, those people have been saved 20 years, and I just blundered like a bull in a china closet through that church, and I thought I was Jack Hyles, I just break things and throw things, and they just put up with it. Thought the poor, dumb student, we just put up with it. Folks just put up with it. course, when you love people, you can put up with them. And so tonight I want to talk to you about your relationship to your preacher, whether it be at Open Door Baptist Church or Sisseton, South Dakota, or some little country church back in Georgia. It's immaterial to me. Your responsibility and my responsibility never changes. Pastors are not infallible. I personally don't know of any who claim to be. And but I want you to know tonight the value of the work. So no matter what I say the rest of the night, I've already answered the question why. It is for the work's sake. It's not for the sake of the preacher. It is not to protect the preacher. It is for the work's sake. Now, if you go out of here and badmouth anything I've said, you obviously have missed the very first thing I've said. It's for the work's sake. Now, the first thing the Bible says here in this verse, in verse 12, is to know your pastor. To know him. You see, it says, we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you. I beseech you, brethren, to know them. Now, I sat down this afternoon with a concordance and Greek dictionary and started looking at the word know, and it was staggering as I saw the different uses. And it is used in so many different ways. But the know here is having to do with having a respect. It has to do with being a part of, knowing. It's not just a knowledge that you have a pastor, but it's talking more about a respect and a relationship. And you know, a little girl said something to me tonight. Bless her heart. Bless her heart. She said something to me tonight that just thrilled me. I'll never forget it. She said to me, Pastor Blue, you're just like my preacher back home. I said, you think I'm that good? She says, you're just that good. And he was great, you see. Now, don't you ever tell these kids any different. You just let them go on thinking that, you see. If you don't tell them, they'll never know. But people ought to know their pastor. And I'm not talking about going out to eat with him. I'm not talking about sitting next to him and getting him to know him. But there ought to be a respect and an esteem that you have for your pastor. Now, I'm not saying that because I feel that I don't have that respect. I feel that I do. Matter of fact, I feel that I have all the respect I need for my people. I think I've been here long enough to earn that respect. You see, I didn't drop in here off the cabbage wagon 2 or 3 weeks ago or 6 months ago. I've been here 9 years from day one. And some of you folks that flitter in and flitter out and gripe about the pastor, you're wasting your time. I wouldn't get out in the parking lot and criticize the preacher. You might get your block knocked off. I mean it. I've been here long enough. These folks have seen that I'm not a charlatan or a fly-by-nighter. I've been here. I've carved from the beginning, from day one, brother. I started when there was nothing here but a field. So I'm not a fly-by-nighter. Don't you come in here and start criticizing this work. Somebody will pop your eyes out. Jack Hiles. I was at pastor school not long ago, and he was telling a story about a fellow out in the parking lot was cussing Dr. Hiles. And the fellow parking car says Buster, you better shut your mouth. And this guy used a profane word against Dr. Hiles. And you know that fellow parking car doubled up his fist and hit that guy, broke his jaw. He sued him, but he still, And so Brother Hiles went down and got him out of trouble. Fellas, if you ever break anybody's jaw on my case, I'll get you out of jail if I can. If I can't, I'll visit you. Now that's what it's talking about. That's what it's talking about. Now notice again, why do you do it? For the work's sake. Do you realize that when somebody tears down their pastor, they're tearing down the work of God? Now you think about it. Ladies, you want to tear down your family? Just go to work on your husband. You want to destroy your kids? Just go to work on your husband. You want to destroy your country? Just go to work on its leaders and destroy them. You want to destroy the work of God? Just go to work on your preachers. Very simple. Because people look to their pastor for leadership. And all you have to do is destroy the leadership, and then people have no leadership. And so why do we do it? Not for the pastor's sake. Heaven knows that. But for the work's sake. Let's go a step further. It says, he is a labor among you. Notice it says, we beseech you, brethren, to know them which labor among you. Now, you can tell after a while if a fellow is doing anything. Brother Gene Springer, graduate of Midwestern Baptist College, used to be my assistant. He didn't get paid, but he worked hard. And about the time I got ready to pay him, he quit and left. But no, I did. We paid him some. This is in the early part of our ministry. And he went to Council Bluff, Iowa, and he started the Open Door Baptist Church in Council Bluff, Iowa. He'll be here this summer, and Lord willing, he's going to be preaching for us. They'll be on vacation. But Brother Springer said to me about a year or two after he'd been in Council Bluff, he said to me, he said, you know, Ken, he said, when I was at Open Door Baptist Church, he said, you gave the orders, and I thought I was doing all the work. But he said, after I've been here 2 years, I have just found out how much work I was not doing. Of course, that's what assistant pastors think. They think many of them, they think all their pastor does is give orders, and they do all the work. And they say, man, that looks easy. I'll just go out and start my own. Go do it, you see. And so your pastor is a co-laborer. One place I've never worked. I don't think I have. Maybe I have. Yes, I have. I was going to say I've never worked in the nursery. But one night I sent folks soul winning. Nobody volunteered. I said, I'll stay. And I sent folks, I said one night. I'll never do it again. But I sent some folks out soul winning, and I stayed and took care of the little kids. Never again. But I did it once. Once is all I have to do it. See. But I've worked on buses. Dan, you remember one time Brother Dan and I went up here, up the road, and we bought a 47 white. That's an old bus. And that's old. 47 white. That thing was full of berry crates, blackberry crates. We cleaned all the crates out of it. It wouldn't start. Dan got a little file, went out and went to work on the points, and we got that thing started. And we were as happy with that thing as you'd be with a Cadillac. I mean, we went putting down the road and got that thing here and got it painted. Matter of fact, I just had my cancer surgery, and we had the thing up here at Mount Lake Terrace. Got right out in a dirty driveway and spray painted that old bus, you know, and went to work on painted it and got it all fixed up, and we drove that old 47 white. It would do about 38 miles an hour. The big old headlights mounted out on the fenders, you know, and it was really, well, we've got one almost like it's sitting out here now. The one's unpainted. It looks just like it. And I remember so many times, Brother Dan and I would, that's before just after he got saved, before we ever went to college, we would lay out here night after night underneath an old bus trying to fix it, you know. He wasn't a mechanic, and I wasn't a mechanic, and we worked on it. And I know what it is. I'm not a mechanic, but I know what it is to tear buses up. And we've done it. I've gone soul winning as much as anybody in this church, won as many souls as anybody in this church. I've helped carry the cement, helped lay the block, helped push the wheelbarrow, helped put in all the ceiling tile, all the lights, helped put in the conduit, helped pull the wire, helped put in the drain field. Never again will I put in a drain field. That's the biggest job I ever got into in my life, but I've done it. I remember Gordon and some of us, we were out here. Remember that, Gordon? Just pouring down rain. We did the dumbest thing. We took a backhoe and dug all the trenches for the drain field, and then we couldn't get the gravel in to put it in the trenches. And we'd have to have the gravel to come out here. They'd dump the gravel in the road, and we'd have to get the wheelbarrows and lay boards across the trenches and try to wheel. The dumbest thing. If you ever want to put in a drain field, call me. I'll tell you how, but I'll not help you. And I've done that. Listen, I've done that. We have pictures. I was just talking to Tony Glardo the other day about when we put the building upstairs up here and how we got together. We'd drive all the nails and put the building together up there. I can tell you what's underneath all the plasterboard. I can tell you where the insulation is. I know from day one, from the very beginning. Now, you say, you bragging? No, but I'm glad. I'm glad that I know what it's all about. I'm glad somebody can't walk around and say, well, the preacher doesn't know. You're corny. I do know. I do know. From day one, I know. Fellows say to me, some fellow running 40 or 50 or 25, he says, Pastor, you don't know what it's like. I say, I know what it's like. You don't have a church under 500 that I don't know what it's like. I do know what it's like. I know what it's like to have 1. I know what it's like to have 5. I know what it's like to have 10. I know what it's like to have 71. I know what it's like to have 100. I know what it's like to have 300. I know what it's like to have 1,000. We've had it, and we're going to have it again someday. We're going to run that someday, you see. But I know what it's like, and I'm glad I know what it's like. And I thank God. So the Bible says you should know them, for they labor among you. Secondly, Secondly, it says to know them that labor among you and are over you in the Lord. Over you in the Lord. Now that does not mean that he is any more important than you. How many of you fellows work somewhere and have a boss? Could you hold up your hand? Everybody here. Everybody has a boss. You think he's any better than you? No, he's just over you. That's all. He's been appointed to be over you. And so the Bible says here that your pastor is appointed. Is appointed. I never know, you know. So I hear that door slam. I think somebody's going to assassinate me or something. Maybe they'll get me mixed up with Brother John, shoot him or something. But John, you holler, you're the preacher if somebody comes in, will you? That's a dedication. But anyway, the Bible says over you, over you, over you. A lady came from Australia. She has been in this church. She gave her testimony right upstairs. There was a lady from Australia. My wife will remember her. Remember her from Sydney, Australia. I don't know if any of you will or not. She went over and stayed with Mrs. Wake, and they taught her how to go soul. Matter of fact, I think she went soul with some of our ladies. She went to Dr. Hiles' church, went to pastor school. They sent her over here for the purpose of learning the soul winning club program for ladies. She was told by her pastor and others, she says, now I want you to get all the information you can on how you can help us build a church. She took her notepad out, took her pen. She told me this. She went up to Dr. Hiles and she asked this question. She said, Dr. Hiles, what makes your church so great? You know what he said? Me. Me. Isn't that something? You know what makes it great? Dr. Jack Hiles. That's what makes it great. Folks say, well, I don't think a church ought to be built around a man. Every church is built around a man. I don't care what you think. Every church is built around a man. And that's why you come, is because of the man. Don't kid yourself. All of us do. All of us do. Now, we ought to have some direction to follow God. I'd hate to think that if I left or died, Open Door Baptist Church would increase by 10,000. I'd hate to think that I've been holding it back all this time. I'd like to think that my presence here has had some influence on Open Door Baptist Church. And the Bible says that God has placed the pastor in the place of leadership over the congregation. Why? Because he's better? No, because God calls. That's why. Now, I want you to notice the idea here of being over. I want you to turn with me to Romans 12:8. Just keep your place there, and let's look at a few verses. Romans chapter 12 and verse 8. Romans chapter 12 and verse 8. It said, he that exhorteth on exhortation, he that giveth, let him do it with simplicity, and he that ruleth with diligence. With diligence. And so God has placed the pastor in a place of a ruler. He is to rule his congregation. Now, you know, I was saved in a convention-type program. I was saved in a church that is run by a convention. And the church was run by a deacon board. And I remember I was a deacon in one of those churches. And I remember how the other deacons, I was just a new deacon, this deacon would get together with me, and the pastor would try to promote something, try to get something done. And this fellow said to me, well, who does he think he is? And I said, yeah, who does he think he is? It's a wonder God didn't kill both of us. By the way, that's why that church didn't get anything done either. It's been there, well, it was going before I ever went to Bible college, and they still are running less than 100 in Sunday school, and they're within a half a mile of South Center. You know what's wrong with the church? I'll tell you what's wrong with the church. The unqualified are running it. That's what's wrong with it. That's what's wrong with it. And you know who gets all the criticism? The preacher. God never called a deacon board. A lady said to me the other day, Pastor, why don't you have deacons? I said, I don't need them. I don't need them. Now, if I need them, I'll have them. Now, that shocks some of you? It shouldn't bother you. You see, you don't play church like you play baseball. If you're going to have a baseball team, you got to have a pitcher, you got to have a catcher, you got to have first, second, and third base, and 3 outfielders. You see, you got to have all that. Folks get the idea. If you're going to have a church now, you got to have deacons, you got to have trustees, you got to have a WMSU or whatever, when we mess up society. You got to have all of that, you see. Now, who sold you that? Who sold you that? Did you get that out of the Bible? Huh? Did you get that out of the Word of God? No, you didn't. You see, and I'm not going to take time to talk about deacons. When I came here to start this church, I called a pastor in Bellevue, And I told him that we were planning the church, and I wished he would pray for us and help us with some financial support if he would. He said, well, Brother Blue, says, tell you what we'd be glad to do. We can't help you with financial support, but if you're going to start a church, we'll send up 4 or 5 families, and you can make them deacons, and then we'll see how it goes. Now, you know what he was saying? Here's what he was saying. He was saying, Brother Blue, if you're going to start a church up there, we'll send 4 or 5 men to come up and control it. And if they can run the program and make a convention church out of it, then we'll see what we can do. I said, no thanks. I like my freedom. I love being free. Brother, no dilly dog's going to tell us how to run our church. Nobody. Nobody. Folks say, what convention do you belong to? Don't belong to any. Just the heavenly one. That's all. Where's your headquarters? I said, I don't even know where my hindquarters are half the time. I don't know about my headquarters. Somebody said to Dr. Vic, where's your Sunday school staff? He says, you're looking at it. Well, he said, where's your educational board? He says, you're looking at it. Well, he said, where's your trustee board? He says, you're looking at it. Folks don't like that. You know why? Folks want the board, the board, the board, the board. They keep the minutes and waste the hours. Listen, I was in Dr. Tom Malone's church, a church running between 3,000 and 5,000. I was there 2 years. You know what the longest business meeting they ever had? 15 minutes. I was in the Tukwila Baptist Church, a church running 80. You know how long their business meetings were? 3 hours. I'm not exaggerating. Listen, we used to come to church and bring our lunch. I pretty soon learned that you had to bring a baseball bat because they turned out to be fights. That's a bunch of junk. A church running 100 or 200 or 300, they don't need a 3-hour business meeting to discuss on which side of the pulpit the flowers go. That's a bunch of junk. Just put them on both sides. But you get a bunch of folks sitting and fighting. Listen, I despise that kind of program. You ever been in Jack Hyles business meetings? You know how long they last? Not more than 10 minutes. Old Dr. Criswell down in Dallas, Texas. I heard Elmer Towns tell this story. They were going to buy a building down the street. Now the building cost $1 million. The pastor, some of the men had gotten together and they discussed it. Dr. Criswell got up in the pulpit and said, now folks, says we need this building down the street. The building will take care of our Sunday school needs. And I've already discussed it with the trustees and the Sunday school teachers. We've talked it over. And he says, I don't see any need for any delay. There's no need wasting God's time. He says, now it's only $1 million. And he says, we're not even going to take a negative vote. All in favor signify by saying amen. That whole building just rang with amens. That's $1 million. Of course, when you have been there 40 years, and you've won most of those folks to Christ, and they've discovered that you are doing the work of God, you don't have to worry about a thing like that. You don't have to worry about a thing like that. I've been here 9 years. I don't guess we've ever had a negative vote. I don't recall one. I don't recall one. Now, we haven't had many votes. But I don't recall having one. That doesn't mean we won't, and it doesn't mean that we wouldn't honor one if we did. But God tells us, why are we to do all this? For the work's sake. You know why folks like these little business meetings? Because they like preeminence. They want to get in and try to say what they think and what they know. You always got somebody fighting for power. Always got somebody fighting for power. I'll tell you what, we got some good men in this church. We got some qualified men in this church. But those are not the men who are fighting for power. You know, the people who are complaining and fighting for power, if I said, okay, this church is yours, you know what would happen? They wouldn't know what to do with it. They wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't have the first idea of what to do. They couldn't even go up and balance the books. They couldn't get through the building department up here. I was just thinking while I was back there with Brother Rich back in Texas. It kind of scared me, and I began to think about it. Do you realize how many responsibilities that I have? You stop and think about it. First of all, I've got to see that every bill is paid here. It's my responsibility. I've got to see that the nursery keeps running and operating smoothly. And I've got to see the nursery workers are happy. And then I have to worry about the building being clean all the time. The bathrooms. I run bathroom inspection 2 or 3 times a week. I inspect the kitchen, go through all the classrooms. I walk through and look. I look when an exit light's out. Didn't I point one out to you last night? I walked by and said, hey, an exit light's out. It's upstairs. I said, it's out. I walk outside if I see a light out. I look for this. You know what? Most folks don't look for it. They don't look for it. They're not worried about it. I have to worry about it. I have to worry about it. I say, somebody says, well, the bus won't run. I know what buses will run, what buses won't run. Most of them won't run. I have to worry about the insurance. I have to worry about the mission program. I have to worry about the school. You say, Brother Rich worries about it. No, I have to worry about it. You say, well, he knows more. No, I love Brother Rich. He doesn't know more about the school. He doesn't. I know what's going on. I don't just run off and say, well, I don't know what's going on. You take care of that. I do know what's going on. If I don't know, I find out. You think I'm going to have a fellow taking over something and I don't know anything about it? I'm going to find out. And I thought about all the Sunday school classes and all the junior churches and the soul winning program and the different things. Why, most folks couldn't keep a bus route going, let alone a church. Most folks can't keep a Sunday school class full, let alone a church. Now, why then should you know those who are over you and labor among you? Why? For the work's sake. That's why. That's why. And then notice something else. Notice something else. The Bible says, well, let's just notice. Go to Hebrews 13 with me. Let me give you 3 verses to look up here. Hebrews chapter 13. And let's see. I think I can find them. Verse 7. You might want to circle or underline verse 7. It says, remember them which have the rule over you, who have spoken unto you the word of the Lord, or the word of God, whose faith follow, considering the end of their behavior. Whose faith follow. God said, first of all, remember them. Remember them. All right, now let's go a little further in this same chapter. And, well, let's see. Verse 17. Verse 17. The verse we just read said, remember them. This verse says, obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls. I'm not talking about your boss down at the work. For they watch for your souls, as they that must give an account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief. Now you see, a preacher has to give an account for his congregation. Has to give an account. And the Bible says that they may do it with joy and not with grief. Now watch this. For that is unprofitable for you. And then, then verse 24. It says, salute all of them that have the rule over you, and all the saints. So in this chapter then, God's talking about the pastor being the ruler in the church. Someone says, Dr. Hile said the 2 things that he's accused of most of all. One is being a dictator, and secondly, not having any love. Those 2 things. Being a dictator. That's what your kids call you when you try to make them mine, right? You don't love me, and you're a dictator. And that's what folks say about their preacher. One lady, bless her heart, she got saved in this church. And, but boy, I tell you what, I pray for her husband daily. I mean, she's got her hair bobbed and wears breeches, and she does all the talking. I tell you what, Gabby. And just talked and talked and talked. And she said one day, she said, I don't like Pastor Blue running the church. And I said, well, honey, the only reason you don't like it is I got here first. That's the only reason you don't like it. You wanted to run it. And, of course, I either had to leave or she had to leave. And like old Dr. R.G. Lee used to say, it's easier for you to move your letter than it is for me to move my family. So she just left. And Lord willing, I'll be here when you're gone. I tell folks, you don't like it, our doors swing both ways. Don't let it hit your rear on the way out. We'll wave by. You don't like what we do around here, just blow up and we'll sweep out the pieces. Matter of fact, if you'll let us know, we'll go down here and clean you off a spot in the parking lot. And we'll worry about it. About how long? About 1 second, maybe? About a half a second. That's all we're going to worry about it. I gave up worrying about whether folks like my preaching or like the program. I don't care. I don't care. Man, I tell you what. Now, I want to do right. I'm not cocky or arrogant, but I learned a long time ago I have to give an account to God Almighty, and that's where I'm going to give an account. It either has to be this way. Either I run this church or somebody else runs it. That's going to be that way. It's going to be that way in your home too, Buster. Either you're going to run it or your wife or your kid's going to run it. You got it? You say, well, I think you ought to grow. I think there ought to be a compromise. Then go start your church and compromise. Folks say, well, where I came from. Go back where you came from. If what you left is so good, why are you away from it? Huh? I get a little bit worried about folks that move from across town, come to Open Door Baptist Church, and then try to make the church they're in now like the one they left. That's dumb. You say, you got an axe to grind? I don't have any axe to grind. Notice again in this verse, it says, who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you. See that word admonish? That word admonish means warn. Now, it means it's not only the preacher's job to exhort. He has many responsibilities. But in this text, it says, and warn you. It is the preacher's responsibility to warn people of the consequences of rejecting God and rejecting His Word. And then notice a step further. It says to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake. Now, you might want to look up that word esteem. Notice it says esteem them very highly. Very highly. So a pastor not only ought to be respected, you ought to respect your preacher. Why? You say, well, you're looking for glory. No, I'm not looking for glory. I said that at the very beginning. I'm not looking for glory. But I'll tell you what, when you show disrespect for your preacher, you show disrespect for the things of God, and you hurt the ministry. Now, you folks, I love you, but you ought to teach your kids to respect their pastor. I'll tell you why. Because they don't respect their preacher, they won't respect the Bible. And if they don't respect the Bible, they won't respect the things of God. I'm not saying a preacher can't be wrong. God knows I'm not saying that. But I am simply saying, is when you tear down your... You folks, I'll tell you how to destroy your kids. I'll give you one easy lesson. Get in your car tonight and gripe and gossip about the preacher on the way home in the hearing of your kids. I guarantee you, you'll destroy your kids. You know what you're teaching your kids when you do that? You're teaching them that what the preacher says doesn't mean anything, and they sit back there and just say, well, you know, Mom and Dad doesn't think much about what he's saying. Why should I think much about when's this program going to be over? You why? For the work's sake. For the work's sake. I have never, ever, God is my witness, I've never let my kids talk about a preacher. One time before we started this church, we went around and visited some churches. I visited one church, it was deader than this kid on the front row. I mean, talk about dead. Talk about dead. The pastor got bless his heart, that's what I feel like doing. But anyway, I got him to sleep. Anyway, this pastor, bless his heart. I think the preacher was a good man. I really do. I think he was a good man. But he needed somebody to run up with a stick and punch him about every 3 syllables to put some life in what he was trying to say. When he got through preaching, my boy said, Dad, was that his? And you know, he said, Dad, was that his sermon? I said, you shut your mouth. You shut your mouth. You shut your mouth. We just don't allow it. I don't allow it. Now, they have a right to disagree, but they don't have a right to talk it over with me. They're not going to criticize God's man. I'm not going to let my kids criticize Brother Rich or Mrs. Rich or Brother Wells or John. I'm not going to. You say, you always agree with what they do? I may not, but I'm not going to let them know it. If I don't agree, I'll go tell one of these men. You see, I'm going to stand behind my staff. I mean that. If you don't believe me, you try me. You say, you think they're always right? No, I don't think they're always right. I think I'm always right. See? But I'm going to stand behind them. I'm going to stand behind them. And if you have any doubts about that, you try me. You try me. All right. So God says esteem them very highly, very highly. Let me give you some references that I've written down here, or some synonyms. First of all, very highly means above, beyond measure. Secondly, it's exceeding abundantly above. The same word is used in Ephesians chapter 3, where it says that he is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you could think or ask. And then another word is used, is exceedingly. And then very highly, more abundantly, and more. Another, it says advantageous. And so this is to be done in love for their work's sake. You know what could solve every problem in this church? Just a good old baptism of Holy Ghost love. That could solve every problem in this church. Solve every problem in every church. Now you say, preacher, what should I do if I don't agree with my preacher? All right, glad you asked. And I invite you to do this. This is what you ought to do. First of all, you ought to keep your mouth shut. That's the first thing you ought to do. Secondly, you ought to call your preacher and make an appointment. That's scriptural. Bring not an accusation against an elder except in the presence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Why? For the work's sake. Not for the preacher, for the work's sake. Somebody comes to you and starts to work on Pastor Blue. Say, just a minute, I don't see your witnesses. Well, I don't have to have any witnesses. Well, God says you do. And by the way, if you accept their gossip without the witnesses, you're a partaker of their wicked sin. And you're helping destroy what? The ministry. The ministry. For the work's sake. Receive not an accusation against an elder except in the presence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Folks, we like to gossip, all of us. But you'd be surprised how that'll just shut people up. Where are your witnesses? Blah, blah, blah. I don't need any witnesses. Well, God says you do. So the first thing you need to do is call your preacher. You need to call him, and then you need to make an appointment and go talk to him. Don't ever buy this thing when people come to you and try to bring an accusation, and you say, well, why don't you go talk to Pastor Blue? And they say, well, he's too busy. That is the number one lie. I am never too busy to talk to people. That's why I am here. And anyone who says the pastor is too busy to listen to my gripe doesn't want to talk to the pastor about their gripe. You hear me? I just shot the shackle, the blocks out from under a few people. I am not too busy. Some folks came to Ray Scott one time. Ray used to be my assistant. I'm tempted to give some folks his names. I'd like to. It wouldn't be unscriptural. I just may do it. I feel a little bit, I feel my horns are growing. And I had gone away to pastor school or vacation or somewhere, and somebody called Ray Scott over, and they went to work. Ray was my assistant. They went to work on me. And Myra Lou. How many of you know Myra Lou? If you don't know her, she'd be like a tornado going through your house. She don't weigh about 120 pounds, but I'll tell you, brother, she's got burrs every way she turns. And Myra Lou sat there on the couch, and pretty soon, kind of like Old Faithful, just began to kind of boil underneath. Pretty soon she got up. She began to pace the floor. She didn't know where to start. She began to pace the floor. Ray told me about this. The company was over, and she just began to pace the floor. She said, I'll tell you right now. She said, I don't like you talking about my preacher like this. Have you ever tried to talk to him? They said, well, he doesn't have time to talk to us. You're a liar. He's got time. Have you tried? They said, no, we ain't tried. Well, don't come around here and gripe about my preacher till you try. Bless God, they left. I love to tell that story. They left, and our church kept growing, and their kids have gone to the devil. I was down here at Fred Meyer one day, standing in the line to cash a check, and some long-haired boy with hair down to his shoulders, just had a full beard, standing, looked like a sissy, tapped me on the shoulder, and I thought he was flirting with me. I said, what do you want? He said, don't you know me? And I had to look at that kid for 5 minutes before I recognized who he was. One of those girls in that family walked out of a store when my boy was here for summer. My boy was standing in the door of a grocery store waiting for somebody. This young lady in that family walked out. You know what she had? She had a six-pack in her arms. She looked up and saw my boy Rocky. She didn't know what to say. Rocky said, looks like you're going to have a party. She hung her head and said, yes. I'll tell you what. You check it out. I double dog dare you to check it out. You check the people out who fight the preacher and see what happens to their kids. I dare you to check it out. I dare you to check it out. I bet you I can go back through and find the families who fought this ministry and check their kids. And I bet you their kids are either unsaved or completely out of the ministry, out of the church. You check it out. You ask Jack Hiles tomorrow night at the meeting. He had 700 in Sunday school one Sunday at Hammond, Indiana. Brother Hiles said, we're coming out of the American Baptist Convention. This church is going to be independent. 300 people got up and began to shake their fists and chant, and I mean bodily. He and his deacons had to throw people off of the platform. I mean, they were coming to get him. 300 walked out that Sunday morning. 5 millionaires. Some of those people came back, got back in that church, and are serving God. Brother Hiles said, I have tried to keep track of most of those families just to see what happened. Have you ever heard Brother Hiles tell this story? Okay. You ought to ask him tomorrow night to tell you what happened to those families who fought the work of God. You're the loser, Buster. You're the loser. Now, well, what should I do? Does that mean I can't do anything? No, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. The preacher's wrong. You know he's wrong. You make an appointment and come to him. I have been wrong. I'll listen to your advice. The Bible said a man is a fool who will not listen to counsel and advice. I want your counsel. I want your advice. I really do. I really do. I pass out questionnaires. I ask these men 75% of the time, I say, fellas, what do you think we ought to do about this? I want your advice. But I don't want you to hurt the ministry by going about things in the wrong way. And so it says to esteem them very highly in love for the work's sake. Now, if you go back to Texas, or you go back to Arkansas, or you go back to Indiana, or you go back to Georgia, or if you go back to Kansas, or back to Oregon, or to Wenatchee, wherever you're from, the same principles apply as they do right here. For the ministry's sake, for the work's sake. For the work's sake. We have every Sunday.